Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Revive Publicly by Friend Account. This is Chapter 6. You Jason Todd? Jason only raised an eyebrow, looking up from where he was standing outside the gas station. Ever since the first headline detailing his return from the dead, he'd been getting recognized more and more often. It did not, however, have to mean that he had to respond well to his new celebrity status. What's it to you? Jason asked, in the most pissed-off tone he could manage at the moment. The way he saw it, the worse the reputation he had, the less people would try to speak with him. I'm gonna need you to come with me, the man said, clearly not picking up the hints that Jason had been lying down. It actually took a few seconds to realize that this wasn't just a fan account, but rather a shit attempt at kidnapping. Or what? Jason asked, tilting his head to the side to provoke further. Even as Jason thought, he was not going to be intimidated by some idiot in a parking lot. Or this, the man said, and before Jason could make another joke, he felt the cold steel of a gun poking his lower back. His first instinct was to laugh. Then he remembered who he was. He wasn't the redhead. He was Jason Todd, the spoiled son of a billionaire who probably had never worked a day in his life, and who would arouse too much suspicion by suddenly beating 2, maybe 3? Guys who were trying to kidnap him. Oh God, he was going to have to let himself be kidnapped, wouldn't he? Jason had enough memories of rescuing Tim from amateurs who wanted to ransom a billionaire's son. He wasn't keen on the situation turning around and losing his blackmail material. The man behind him nudged him with the gun, and Jason bit back a sigh. All right, he finally exclaimed, raising his hands in surrender. He followed the man a few steps to his car, almost sighing in relief when he realized that if they were taking him to a second location, or better yet, if they were just uncareful after closing the door, then he'd be free more quickly than thought. And better yet, Jason wouldn't have to face the embarrassment of being rescued by either the cops or one of the bats. It was a rather good plan if he thought so himself. It was also a plan he was forced to toss aside after the second he felt a stab of a needle in his neck. Fucking fantastic. The drug set in quickly, clouding his head, weakening his limbs, and making his vision go hazy before him. Jason was shaken out of it when cold water was splashed across his face. A cold shock that finally pulled him back to reality. A hood covered his face now, trapping the water in and making Jason choke on the drops that had managed to come through. When it was pulled off, it seemed like he'd been injected all over again. The world spun before his eyes, the lights blurring together until the entire room was too bright for him to make out. When had he been moved from the car to the room? Not ideal that he couldn't remember. You know why you're here? The same man spoke, and it took Jason an embarrassingly long time to realize the man was standing before him. Fuck, that wasn't great. Because of my charming personality? Jason replied, raising his head to look the man in the eyes and feigning the impression that he was alright and didn't need his full brain capacity just to focus on the guy. He should be able to escape. The binds around his wrists only tied him to the chair he sat on. All he'd need was to throw himself backwards with enough force to break the chair, and then he was sure he could beat the captors with tied hands. It should be possible. But then he had to account for the fact that Jason couldn't see properly, that his ears were ringing from he didn't know what, that his head was pulsing with pain, that water rested in his throat, threatening to choke him, and his limbs felt like gummy. He was in no condition to escape, at least not until the sedative wore off. A hit to the jaw cut his thoughts off, and any hope of escape with it. He would grant the guy one thing. They knew how to pack a proper punch. Then again, maybe Jason should worry about the lack of pain instead. That all his jaw did was feel numb, and the throbbing in his head was a lot worse. He thought the man in front of him said something new. Try again? Maybe? Jason didn't understand him, and from the way the world was teetering in front of him, he doubted asking the man to repeat himself would help. His head fell to the side, and when Jason jerked it back up, anything not to appear weak, there was a camera station in front of him. He'd blacked out. Again. Oh God, he really would have to wait to be saved, wouldn't he? How much time had passed from when they'd taken him? How often had he been drugged? Jason glared at the camera with all the strength he could muster. This better not be some weird fetish porn that he was pulled into. His eyes finally focused on the guy behind the camera, who'd seemingly noticed that Jason was alive as well. Be a good boy and tell Daddy to come save you. The guy spoke, a wicked smile on his lips. Oh God, this definitely was weird fetish porn. Finally, the pain in his head allowed him a coherent thought. He was Jason Todd, son of Bruce Wayne. They wanted to ransom him. The thought was so obvious that Jason couldn't help but laugh. Whether it was because he found it funny, or because he couldn't believe he hadn't thought of it first, he wasn't sure. Jason should probably figure out whatever they drugged him with. If only his head would let him connect the 1,000 dots running around rampant. Beside him, a gun clicked, and all Jason could do was slowly turn his head and line himself up directly to it. Had that been there the entire time? He really was fucked, wasn't he? Beg, the man spoke again, and this time Jason could hear annoyance in his tone. It made him smile all over again. The "or else" remained unsaid. Jason only continued laughing, and yeah, this was definitely the drugs that were fucking him over this badly. I took the wrong son. Jason finally answered, ignoring the way his eyes were starting to burn. He's not coming. He didn't know how long he'd been there, but he was sure that if he were anyone else, then Batman would have already come for him. Jason was hit again by a strong punch, enough to swing his head to his side, and when he returned back, the camera was gone and he was alone. So, another blackout. Great. He tested the binds around his arms again, wincing when it hurt to move them. His arms were sore, legs too. He'd been sitting there a long time. The realization that Jason didn't know how long scared him. He didn't know what time it was, what day even. A lot of uncertainties that Bruce Wayne was supposed to fix. The thought made him laugh out loud, a genuine laugh that started in his chest and built up until it almost sounded like a sob. Bruce Wayne was supposed to swoop in and save him. How could he when even Batman had failed? He told himself that the wetness on his cheeks came from the previous attempt at waterboarding. Eventually, Jason's eyes began falling closed once, and when he blinked them open, there were blurry figures in front of him. "You with us?" A strangely distinct voice asked him. Maybe there were fingers in front of his face snapping at him. Jason couldn't quite place the weird clicking noise. "Apparently, Bruce Wayne needs some incentive," the man said, and yeah, no shit. It's not like Jason hadn't warned them that he was the wrong son to take. Then the guy was waving something next to his head, and Jason needed an embarrassingly long time to realize that it was a bomb. Jason did know enough to know that the falling beeps were the guys setting the bomb, and the weight in his lap meant he was carrying it. When his vision finally stopped swimming, Jason was alone again. All that filled the quiet around him was the ticking of the bomb in his lap. Silent tears dripped from his cheeks, and he stared at the locked door in front of him. He was in that warehouse all over again. He could hear the manic laughter in the background, and it took him a while to realize that it was his own. Ironic, wasn't it? Bruce, Batman, his father would be too late to save him a second time. He would be failed once again. This time, when Jason cried, he didn't lie to himself about it. His tears clouded up his vision, and by the time he could see again, a hood had been placed over his head. When had the beeping of the bomb ceased? "You're in luck. Daddy's finally paid up." The words barely registered. His hands were unlocked, and, logically, Jason should be able to escape. He should be able to fight back now. He couldn't, and when they dragged him out of the room, his feet scratched over the tiles. Vaguely, Jason thought about how annoying this must be for them. He'd built up muscle over the years, and he'd always been on the taller side. He must weigh a lot. The thought made him chuckle, and he was annoyed with the swat over his head. They finally stopped outside. Jason could feel the drop in the temperature and the wind whipping around him. The hood was ripped off his head, and the lights were blinding to him. In the distance, he could make out a figure standing in front of a dark car. Not a very relieving sight. Then Jason was shoved forward. He almost managed to catch himself from falling. Quite a feat if he was going to be honest, considering how terribly he felt. Walk. Jason was at the end of his fucking line. For a second, he considered how funny it would be if he were able to just lie down. If he just put his head to the ground and didn't move. How badly would their plans be foiled? Apparently, Jason did have some will to live left as he got up painstakingly slowly. First moving his knees under him until he was kneeling, then he got his hands under him and up from the floor. Step by step, he removed himself from the ground and began tottering forward. Walking really couldn't be used to describe what he was doing. He counted the steps, and when looking forward made his head hurt, he closed his eyes. He finally stopped when a hand was set on his shoulder, and Jason just hoped that whoever wanted to kill him would get it over with quickly. He didn't have the energy left to protect himself. Instead, much to his surprise, he was pulled into a tight hug that seemed to last an eternity. It was the only comfort he'd gotten in He didn't know how long. Then the comfort was pulled away, though hands were still holding Jason up. Probably a good thing, considering Jason didn't know how long he would be able to keep standing on his own. Jason? It took him a few seconds to place his father's voice. Can you hear me? Jason wanted to say so many things at once that he was fine. It was really nothing. The guys were amateurs at best. It was a normal Tuesday for him. That he was sorry for getting caught. Next time he'd be more careful. That he just needed to sleep it off. He'd been drugged. He maybe had a concussion. You came, was all that Jason's drug-induced mind could conjure up. Of course, his father said, and he almost sounded sad. You weren't too late. His fear was almost revealed by the crackling of his voice, but that could be attributed to his containment. He couldn't remember the last time he had had something to drink. I'm sorry, Jason, his father whispered. His voice sounded worse than Jason's. I'm so sorry. Was he crying? Jason's mind started going hazy again, before he could find an answer to his question, but he felt his father's hands tighten around him as the blackness took over once again. Alright guys, that is the end of chapter 6 of Revive Publicly But Orphan Account. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.